You asked for it. It is here. My first and only mock draft for the 2025 NFL Draft. NFL Spotlight starts now. Welcome in. It is the Wednesday, April 23 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. The NFL Draft is tomorrow. It is basically here. And like I do every single year, I only do one mock draft. This is it. Last year, I was very, very happy with how it came out. We had 26 of the 32 players going in the first round, 11 to the right team, 7 for 7 to start off the 2024 NFL Draft in my mock, and it is back, and we are doing it in video form this year. I have no idea how long this is going to go. We're going to try to go fast. This is my only mock draft. This is not what I think teams should do. It is what people around the NFL believe those teams will do and what they think will happen. One thing about this mock, no trades at all. I know some people don't like it, but I think if you do trades, it gets very messy in the end. So we're going to stick to no trades at all. If I do think a team is a potential trade team, I will mention it with their pick before I announce what I think they will do here in this draft. Let me bring in my good friend Ben Allen. Ben, it is finally here, my only mock draft before the real thing gets underway. How are you doing?
I am splendid. Yeah, I did my mock draft today as well. I will be 32 of 32, and you guys will not be able to tell any different because I'm not putting it out there. So in my head, I'm already a winner. But what's important today is going through your stuff. Like you said, you're going to go through, you'll give the rationale. I might fire back here and there with some things that stand out to me. We'll dive into it a little bit deeper. But let's just go ahead and jump right into it, Ari. With the first pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select
so much suspense over here. Obviously, I'm going to go with Colorado. I'm just kidding. Miami quarterback Cam Ward is the pick here. I mean, they fell in love with him. He's QB1 in this draft. They are going to open a new stadium soon in Tennessee as well. So they're hoping this is the quarterback who could really become the guy. He could become really electric. And basically, when that building does open up, they're going to be sold out every single game. But Brian Callahan last year took over as the head coach. He did not pick Will Levis. It obviously did not work out. Would not surprise me if Will Levis is moved at some point over here, even though the Titans are saying they won't do that. But this will be now the fourth time in Brian Callahan's career that he is working with a number one overall pick quarterback. He worked with Peyton Manning. He worked with Matthew Stafford. He worked with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. And now he will work with Cam Ward. He is the future in Tennessee, and he will be the number one overall pick on Thursday night. No surprise there.
No surprise there. How long ago do you think they made up their mind?
So we mentioned this here on the show, but they had a whole new front office structure here with Mike Borgonzi and Dave Ziegler came in and Reggie McKenzie came in. Chad Brinker was already there. So they really went through the entire process, but they realized about a month and a half ago, really backdating to the combine, there was talk that Cam might be the guy for them. And they went through the process. All the new people in the front office went through it. They had a consensus. This is the guy. They had trade offers from the Browns, trade offers from the Giants. They basically said, hey, guys, we're not moving. We're staying here. Mike Borgonzi officially confirmed that the other day. So this is the pick, and they basically agreed on this, I would say about a month ago.
Makes sense. All right. With the second pick in the draft, the Cleveland Browns select.
This is where it gets fun. I know there's a lot of talk about Colorado wide receiver / cornerback Travis Hunter. That is my pick as well, the Heisman Trophy winner. There are reports out there that the Browns and the Giants have been taking trade calls. They're willing to listen. I would be surprised if they move out. I do think Cleveland is probably listening more than the Giants, but I would be shocked if any of them actually move from here. I mean, Andrew Berry in his press conference last week compared Travis Hunter to Shohei Ohtani. I think that should tell you enough, but they could use another receiver across from Jerry Jeudy. They could use another cornerback across from Denzel Ward. Hunter will probably start off at receiver. They'll sprinkle him in at cornerback as well. He wants to do both, but he just has tremendous hand-eye coordination and elite ball skills, a unique talent, a unique prospect. And this is truly going to be the Browns and how they develop and make sure they do this the right way to make sure they don't mess up such a unique talent and prospect in order for him to reach his max potential. But I believe they will stay here, and I believe they're going to go with the Heisman Trophy winner in Travis Hunter.
How long and hard do you think they thought about pairing Abdul Carter with Myles Garrett?
I think that was a real debate in that building. I think there might even be people in that building who probably would like to have Abdul Carter across from Myles Garrett and have a ferocious defensive line, which they've been trying to find that guy across from Myles Garrett. But this is a talent that we've never seen before in the NFL. And I think people around the NFL in that Andrew Berry press conference took away the fact that he mentioned the Shohei Ohtani comparison. And also, we heard Travis Hunter, I believe he told CBS Sports, I want to play both ways or just don't play me at all. If you listen to that press conference, Andrew Berry said that he's going to start off at receiver if they take him, but he also made it clear that he could do both, and we would be willing to do both if he was to be the draft pick at number 2. So I believe he's the pick, and they're going to have a potentially generational talent, something we've never seen before in the NFL.
With the 3rd pick, the New York Giants select.
All right, so this is where it's really, really complicated and complex. I'm going to give them Penn State pass rusher Abdul Carter, but I am going to preface this by saying I still think this could be Shedeur Sanders. Frankly, I would not be shocked if it is Shedeur Sanders. I think there's a group of people in that building, specifically in the front office, who want him and are perfectly fine with taking Shedeur Sanders at number 3. They have just done too much work on him for months upon months for them to just say, you know what, we're not taking him. So I think there are people in that building who want him. I think there are people in that building who think it's too early. And really, as great as Abdul Carter is, and he is amazing, there is a shoulder injury, which is not a big deal to teams. There is this foot injury, which Carter didn't even know about, but it is something that teams are, monitoring and trying to figure out if that's something that could be a problem down the line. But there is also this thing about the way he came across in visits. It's not that he's a bad guy, but he just has that I'm the guy vibe, which for some people, that's awesome. For some people, rubs them the wrong way. But I'm giving the Giants Carter here because he is the better talent and he makes more sense at number 3 overall in this draft. But it would not surprise me one bit if it is Shedeur Sanders. And just by the way, if this does end up being Shedeur Sanders and Abdul Carter falls, we're going to get to the Patriots in a second. It would not surprise me if the Patriots would pass on Abdul Carter and take the player that I will give them here in a second. So this pick at number 3 is fascinating for so many elements because if it's Shedeur, obviously if he goes early, if it's not, we could see him sliding. And if it's Abdul Carter, there's a scenario where he's outside the top 4, which is a crazy thing when nobody thought would happen in this draft.
All right, let's go ahead and get to that 4th pick you were just talking about. The New England Patriots select.
So I have them taking LSU offensive tackle Will Campbell. And if the Patriots had not won that Week 18 game with Joe Milton versus the Bills and their backups, they would have the number 1 overall pick right now, and they would probably get a nice package of picks, whether it's from the Browns or the Giants or the Titans, from somebody who would want Cam Ward. But obviously they're here at number 4. This is a situation where they're here at number 4. They are not going to get Travis Hunter, who I think is the number 1 player on their board. They addressed defense heavy in free agency with Milton Williams and Harold Landry and Robert Spillane and Carlton Davis. They addressed wide receiver with Stephon Diggs, who is on that contract, which really they could get out of after 1 year. They addressed some of the offensive line, Garrett Bradbury at center, Morgan Moses, who is more of a right tackle. That left tackle position is a glaring hole right now. And Will Campbell has made it clear to NFL teams, so has his agent, that he's only going to play left tackle. And this is a player who only played left tackle at LSU. His football IQ is off the charts. Mike Vrabel, this is a Mike Vrabel type of guy. He would call out blitzes from the left tackle spot at LSU. He wore the number 7 patch at LSU, which is given to their top playmaker. It was given to an offensive lineman, which just tells you how important he was over there. He really is perfect for what Mike Vrabel wants his players to be, what the culture is trying to build. And listen, you could start him at left tackle. If it doesn't work, you can move him over to guard, and he'll be an all-pro guard for the next 10 years. This is a comp that I got for him. It's Brandon Scherff back in 2014, I believe, in that draft. He came into the NFL. He was picked number 5 by the Washington Redskins at the time. They announced him as an offensive tackle at training camp. They realized right away he cannot be a left tackle, kicked him inside the guard, became a multiple-time Pro Bowl guard, became a free agent, became the highest paid guard in football. That is what right now you're looking at with Will Campbell. He's either going to be a great left tackle and it's going to be fine, or if it doesn't work out, move him inside the guard because of the arm length, and he'll be an exceptional guard as well. But he has made it clear to teams he wants to be a left tackle. I think the Patriots are going to take him and they're going to start him at left tackle, and that is where I have them going here, even if Abdul Carter is on the board.
Very interesting. Speaking of interesting, the 5th pick in the draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select.
All right, this is one where I have not seen many mocks doing this. It's one of the most mysterious teams that there is out there. I'm going to have them going with Arizona wide receiver Ted McMillan. That's right, a player who some people have outside the top 10. I've seen him in the 20s. I think, first of all, the Jaguars are a serious trade down team potentially. They would do it if the right offer came along, but the Jaguars are really a team that nobody has been able to figure out. I've seen for a long time many people pegging them with Mason Graham, the Michigan defensive tackle, and it kind of makes sense because that is a need for this team. But I've heard Mason Graham is a really great talent, but a player that some people in the analytics community are not very high on. I think the Jaguars are a heavy analytics team, so I do not see them taking Mason Graham. Here's why I went with Ted McMillan. Liam Cohen, their new head coach, he had Mike Evans in Tampa Bay, a big body receiver. He, of course, also had Chris Godwin alongside with him. Trevor Lawrence back in college, his success when he was there was with 2 big body receivers. That was T. Higgins, and that was, of course, Justin Ross. Those are just 2 big body guys. That's where he had all the success there at Clemson. And you look at Ted McMillan, this is a 6'4" guy, 213 pounds. You put him there with Brian Thomas, and now you have your nucleus for the next 5 years. That is going to be what Liam Cohen had with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. That is essentially going to be the T. Higgins for what Trevor Lawrence had at Clemson. That is why I'm going to go with Ted McMillan here at number 5 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I've not seen many mocks doing this. I know there are many people in the draft community, some people who like him, some people who don't like him, some people who question the effort. I think he is a perfect player for what Liam Cohen is trying to do for this offense. He was brought there to fix Trevor Lawrence. There is no better way to do that than getting him a weapon here, and that's what they're going to do at number 5.
All right, moving on. The Las Vegas Raiders are on the clock with the 6th pick. Who do they take?
Well, I know everyone and their mothers have had the Raiders taking Ashton Jeanty here at number 6. I think every single mock I've seen had them doing that, but I'm going to go a different direction. I'm going to give them Missouri offensive tackle Armand Membou. And listen, if you're going to take a running back high, I feel like you need to have 75 80%, 85% of your roster in a really, really good spot. And I don't think the Raiders are there yet. I think they have a lot of other really important positions they have to address on this team. And this is a situation right now where I feel like the Raiders have been way too open and way too upfront about taking Ashton Jeanty and talking about how good of a player he is. We saw the other day Pete Carroll at the press conference when the GM John Spytek was asked a question about Ashton Jeanty. He whispered to Spytek, "Hey, be careful what you're going to say here." This is what Pete Carroll is. He loves playing around with the media. Remember that one year in Seattle where they were taking all these selfies with the quarterbacks, trying to make believe they're going to take a quarterback high in the draft, and eventually they just took Devon Witherspoon. So this is what Pete Carroll does. He loves playing around. He likes zigging when people zag. I have them taking an offensive tackle, and frankly, you look at this new GM and John Spytek, who in my mind is an exceptional talent evaluator. He was in Tampa Bay where last year they drafted Bucky Irving in the fourth round, and he had over 1,000 rushing yards in his rookie year. They drafted Rachaad White in the middle rounds of the draft, and he had some success early on in his career. They found Sean Tucker as an undrafted free agent. He had 192 yards in a game last year versus the Saints in week 6 or week 7. This is a very deep running back class. Nobody else is like Ashton Jeanty, but they have to address other positions. Armand Membou is a player who is a natural right tackle. You plug him in right away. They had a different rookie, DJ Glaze, start 17 games last year at right tackle. he did a good job, but he could become your swing tackle. And frankly, Membou is a player who you could start him at right tackle, and eventually you could transition him to left tackle. And think of a player who did that before. Tristan Wirfs started his career at right tackle, eventually made the flip to left tackle. Guess who was there with him in Tampa Bay? That was John Spytek. The left tackle right now in Las Vegas, Kolton Miller, is getting up there in age. He needs a new contract. I'm not sure. Maybe they will give it to him. Maybe they won't. I think they address the offensive line with this pick, and Armand Membou is my pick for Las Vegas.
Membou, a very popular pick for the next team that's on the clock, which means that Ashton, Jeanty, and Mason Graham are still available for the Jets. Do they take either one of those guys?
Yeah, I think Mason Graham would be a consideration here, but I'm going to go offense here for the Jets. And I think Membou would be a great choice as well, but obviously he's not available here in this mock. I'm going to give them Penn State tight end Tyler Warren. And this is, by the way, just another team similar to the Jaguars that people around the league and people picking behind the Jets are just not sure what they're going to do. The Jets have done an exceptional job of just keeping their mouth shut, which the previous regime and the previous front office did not do so well. Again, I think Membou would be an option here. I also think Jahdae Barron, the cornerback out of Texas, would fit really well in Aaron Glenn's defense as a Brian Branch type, but I think this is a little bit too early for him. But Tyler Warren is a yak machine. He just give him the ball and let him work. I mean, he'll run through you. He'll run by you. He will have defenders bounce off of him. Over 100 catches a year ago. He was used all over the formation at Penn State. He really could play everywhere on the field. And for me, they just brought in Justin Fields on this 2-year, $40 million contract. They've continued to say publicly how much they're all in on him. They've already named him the week 1 starter. He would make life easier for Justin Fields. The previous regime, by the way, with the Jets, they considered Brock Bowers last year. They, of course, took Olufushanu in the end, who's going to be a great player for them. But this team needs a tight end. They let Tyler Conklin leave in for agency. Right now, really all they have is Jeremy Ruckert, who I don't think is a starter. So Tyler Warren would be the pick of year for the Jets. I know they had him in for a private workout, which was reported earlier this week. So this is a player that makes sense for this situation in this mock draft.
All right, the next team is about as chalky as it gets. Jalen Walker is going to be a Carolina Panther, right?
Well, that is where all the mocks are, and that is also what I have. But Carolina has also made it known that they are open to moving down. It does not seem that there are many teams out there that are trying to move up, which is part of the problem. But Jalen Walker, who I'm giving them here at number 8, he is one of the most complex prospects in this class because he played as an off-ball linebacker and at edge at Georgia. And he'll be an edge guy in the NFL, but he really could be used as a chess piece, and it really depends where he ends up, which defensive coordinator. I think Ejiro Evero in Carolina, their defensive coordinator, will know how to use him. And his pass rush toolkit, it is legit. Like, he is explosive off the edge. He could beat you with speed or with his raw power. He's really good in the run defending category as well, and he really changes directions like a skill player. And he grew up around football his entire life. His dad was a football coach. He grew up in North Carolina, so it would be a homecoming for him if the Panthers actually take him. But you look at what the Panthers did this offseason. They have been focusing on that defensive line. They're going to get Derrick Brown back from his torn meniscus last year. They signed Tayshawn Warden in free agency. That interior has been taken care of, but the edge rushers really need some work. They have Jadeveon Clowney right now. They have DJ Wanham right now. Both those guys are on 1-year deals. Their contracts expire after the season. They need a guy for the long run, and I'm going to give them Jalen Walker here. It would not surprise me if they trade down. Would not surprise me if they consider Mason Graham, who's still on the board, but I think they have to focus on the edges, and I'm giving them the Georgia edge rusher and Jalen Walker here.
New Orleans Saints are on the clock with the 9th pick. They select
a lot of quarterback buzz here. I do not think it's going to be a quarterback at number 9. I'm going to give them a player who a couple of weeks ago on the show, I said he is going to go higher than most people think. I am giving them Texas offensive lineman Kelvin Banks Jr. That's right. I said 2 weeks ago on the show, he's somebody who people have in the bottom of round 1. I saw a mock last time that I didn't even have him in the first round. He's going to go very high in this draft, and he could go as high as number 9 here to the Saints. A 3-year starter at left tackle at Texas. Some teams in the NFL do view him as a guard. guard. And that is one thing over here that the Saints, if they view him as a left tackle, then it makes sense. If you're taking him as a guard, I don't think it makes sense this high in the draft. But the Saints over here, they would be taking him as the left tackle. Last year, they drafted Taliese Fuaga, who played some left tackle last year. He was fine. I think he is better off at right tackle. You move him there. Trevor Penning, a different first-round pick, has not really worked out. You slide him out of the starting rotation, and then you make Kelvin Banks Jr. your starting left tackle. But this is a team that has a bunch of needs, but this would solidify the offensive line in New Orleans and really help them in the long term. I do think they address quarterback at some point in the draft. I just don't think it's going to be a number 9.
All right, we spoke with Sam Monson yesterday about how Ashton Jeanty would be a perfect pick for the Chicago Bears. In your mock draft, he is still available. Is that who you see them taking at 10?
The Bears at number 10 will go with the running back. Ashton Jeanty's slide is officially over. And listen, we know how important the running back position was to Ben Johnson in Detroit. They, of course, drafted Jahmyr Gibbs at number 12. They had David Montgomery, who they took from Chicago in free agency. This was the one position that Ben Johnson and this new Bears coaching staff did not address in free agency in the offseason. They have an offensive line now when they addressed it with Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson and Drew Dahlman. They need another running back on this team. They could get one later for sure, but why not get the best one for where this team is, where this offensive line is, where this quarterback is going into year 2. The defense is already, for the most part, set. Make life easier for Caleb Williams. So I'm going to have Ashton Jeanty joining this team. And just think about it for a second, where you have Caleb, Jeanty behind them, DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet at tight end, then your offensive line with Braxton Jones, Joe Thuney, Drew Dahlman, Jonah Jackson, Darnell Wright, with Ben Johnson calling the plays. That is a fun team. This is a team that I think makes sense with taking a running back with where their roster is. I think it takes them to a whole nother level. And the Bears, if they do it, they become one of the most must-watch teams in 2025.
All right, let's go ahead and do a quick recap of the top 10 picks in your mock draft so far. We have Cam Ward to the Tennessee Titans with the first pick, Travis Hunter to the Browns with the second pick, Abdul Carter to the Giants with the third pick, Will Campbell to the Patriots with the fourth pick, Tetairoa McMillan to the Jaguars with the fifth pick, Armand Membou to the Raiders with the sixth pick, Tyler Warren to the Jets with the seventh pick, Jalen Walker to the Panthers with the eighth pick, Kelvin Banks Jr. to the Saints with the ninth pick, and Ashton Jeanty to the Bears with the 10th pick. Most notably not in your top 10 picks is Mason Graham. Curious to see where you have him. With that being said, the 11th pick is up. The 49ers are on the clock. Who do they go with?
Mason Graham's slide is officially over. This is longer than I think he would expect this to go. Many people pegged him at number 5 to the Jaguars. I do not see it happening, but the 49ers defensive line, it is undergoing a bit of a reset. We've seen them move on from a bunch of guys over the last 2 off seasons. Last year, Eric Armstead, we saw Javon Kinlaw leave. We've seen Malik Collins get released this offseason. Javon Hargrave was released this offseason, and on and on. They need to get bodies there on the defensive line. They need to get younger on the defensive line, get somebody to join Nick Bosa for the long term. This would be a gift for San Francisco if Mason Graham slides to number 11. Again, some people have been trying to find some holes in his game. I think it's wrong. I think some people I don't know what it is. I'm not an analytics guy, but some people in the analytics community have been trying to drop him down for whatever reason. I think his slide is going to end over here at number 11, and we're going to start seeing some more defensive tackles start coming off the board here very soon.
Dallas Cowboys are now on the clock with the 12th overall selection. Dallas Cowboys take
Texas wide receiver Matthew Golden. Now, I do think the Cowboys would be okay sliding down a bit because they do like a number of prospects in this draft who are projected to go a bit later in round 1. But in this mock, Golden stays in the state of Texas and becomes the 1-2 punch with CeeDee Lamb. He really is a natural complement to CeeDee Lamb, something the Cowboys have been looking for. He could really take the top off of a defense. He will create space, but he is not just somebody who is a burner. He is a terrific route runner. He ran a 4.29 at the combine. Some scouts will tell you when you watch his film, it does not look like 4.29, but he clearly does have that in him. But a dependable receiver who, for Dak Prescott, for the way he operates and the way he progresses the field, having him with CeeDee Lamb will make life much easier for him. Some people still believe a running back could be an option here. A defensive lineman could be an option. I've seen some people put offensive lineman here. The Cowboys board is really wide open. They could use a number of guys over here. They have to hit on this pick considering how many high-priced players they have in this roster, but they have been looking for that guy to be across of CeeDee Lamb, and I'm going to give them Matthew Golden here, the Texas receiver.
So obviously you have Tetairoa McMillan going number 5 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. If he were to fall here to the Cowboys at 12, do you believe that he would still be in favor of taking Tet over Golden?
So I've heard both receivers for Dallas, but I've heard Matthew Golden is just a better fit for what they need with CeeDee Lamb. You need somebody who could create some more space and really have this offense moving. So Ted McMillan is a guy who could go up and get it. I don't think they're looking for that type of receiver. I think they're looking for somebody who is a route runner who could create some space and really open things up over here for CeeDee Lamb. That would fit more with Matthew Golden. So this would be the ideal scenario, I would imagine, for the Dallas Cowboys when it comes to the receivers.
With the 13th overall pick, the Miami Dolphins select.
All right, so cornerback is the position I'm going with here. I'm going to give them Texas cornerback Jahdae Barron. And I debated having Will Johnson, the Michigan cornerback here, but Barron has really been a riser. And I mentioned a couple of weeks ago how cornerback number 2 after Travis Hunter for teams, a lot of teams have it very differently here. And Barron, he was just outstanding wherever you lined him up at Texas, outside, in the slot. They put him in the box as a dime linebacker here and there. I mean, he had over 300 career snaps at every single cornerback spot, left, right, slot, whatever it is. He took snaps everywhere, and he was really good everywhere. He was really versatile and had 5 interceptions this past year. That earned him the Jim Thorpe Award, which is the nation's best defensive back. Really, really strong pre-draft process as well, and interviews really came across well for teams. And all we know already is that Miami Dolphins need cornerback help. They are planning to move on from Jalen Ramsey in a trade if they're able to find a trade partner. They need bodies there. The reason I'm not giving them Will Johnson is simply because there is the injury. They need healthy bodies there. And I think some teams were a little bit turned off by the fact that he did not run a 40-yard dash at his pro day. So there are some things there. I still think he's an exceptional player. His 2023 tape was unbelievable, and he should be going high in this draft. I do have him sliding. We'll get them here later on. But for the Miami Dolphins, I have them going with Barron, who for some defenses is a really, really good fit, but for most schemes, he fits regardless. But there are some teams in particular, like, for example, the Jets at number 7, where he would fit perfectly, but he would fit right in with the Dolphins as well.
All right, moving on to Indianapolis. With the 14th pick, the Colts select.
All right, I've seen many mock drafts with this. I'm going to keep that trend going. Michigan tight end Colston Loveland will be the pick of your number 14 for the Colts. The Colts have not taken a tight end in the first round since 2003 when they selected Dallas Clark. That one worked out pretty well, but this is a team that has been trying to find the tight end the last couple of years. Brock Bowers, that was a target for them last year. They tried to trade up, just couldn't do it. Of course, settled for Laiatu Latu, the first defensive player to come off the board last year, but they have not addressed tight end this offseason. If anything, they've had guys leave the building, like a Kylan Granson, who's now in Philadelphia. A quarterback's best friend is a tight end. We don't even know who's going to be the quarterback for the Colts, but whoever it is, I think that quarterback, Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, would appreciate having a reliable tight end. And Colston Loveland, his speed, his agility to make him a constant threat down the seam of the field, it's traits that teams covet. He would help whichever quarterback is playing for the Colts. And of course, this is a team that needs to win this year. They feel the pressure. Chris Ballard feels it. Shane Steichen feels it. Would not surprise me if they try to trade up as well. I do think Warren is probably a better type of player for them when it comes to the tight ends. So maybe they try to trade up for him if he slides a little bit. But Colston Loveland, you can't go wrong with him either. He will be the pick of your number 14 for me.
Reminder, no trades in an Ari Meirov mock draft because he's a man of standards and doesn't like to go with hypothetical situations that are completely out of our control, because all of the rest of this is thankfully in our control. So that's good. All right. 15th pick in the draft. The Atlanta Falcons are up. Who do they take?
I mean, they better address the defense here in this draft. They could use more picks. They could trade down. That's not really something that Terry Fontenot does often. I think he's only traded down once in his career. He has
So
yet
they
to
take a
take.
quarterback, is what you're saying, right?
Well, last year we thought they'd take a pass rusher, and of course, we know what they did, Ben. They took a quarterback. We all said Dallas Turner, Dallas Turner, Dallas Turner. Of course, they took Mykel Penix. But this year, they will address defense. I'm saying they will, and it's going to be Marshall defensive end Mike Green. Green led the nation in sacks last season with 17. He just explodes off the ball. You'll never guess this, but the teams that has the fewest sacks since 2018, it is the Atlanta Falcons. They've been trying to figure out this position forever. They traded for Matthew Judon last year. It didn't work. They've tried other guys. It has not worked. He's not just a pass rusher, by the way. He really worked hard on his run defense last year, really became better at it. So you're getting a player who is really good at both elements when it comes to that position. We all thought they're going to do this last year. They didn't. They have to address the defense this year. Their owner, Arthur Blank, at the owners' meetings basically admitted that this will be a draft that will be heavy on defense. They only have 5 picks right now. We're not surprised if they try to get some more, but if this is a pass rusher who they like is on the board at 15, they're going to take him. And from my understanding, there is some off the field stuff in the past with Mike Green. There was a sexual assault allegation. He was not charged. The case was suspended. He has denied all wrongdoing. Some teams are not happy about it and concerned and would not take him. From my understanding, Atlanta, in this case, does not have a problem with it. They would be okay with taking him if he was on the board. I know they like some other pass rushers as well, but Mike Green and his situation is something that they are not worried about.
Do you think that any of the 14 other teams ahead of him have potentially said, nope, and that's why we would see this slide? Because I know arguably he is a top 10 talent. So do you see him, do any of these teams ahead of them really just being like, nope, not happening?
But I have heard from one team who I do think will be in the pass rush market saying it's unlikely we will take him. I don't know if that was because of that. I did not really ask, but I do know there's one team in particular that is not taking him in the top 10, but there's definitely teams in the NFL who are not into it. I think there's teams in the bottom of the draft. In particular, I know one team, another one that is like, we're not doing him. We're not doing James Pierce as well, who also has some character concerns. Those guys are off their boards. But from my understanding, Atlanta is okay with Mike Green. They're also okay with James Pierce. They're okay with a couple of these guys who might have red flags for other teams. So that is the situation, at least from what I've heard from teams in the NFL.
And to be very clear, the James Pierce situation is more of a motor thing and his actual desire to play football, as Mike Green.
Yes. Two separate category of stuff, but there are things there that put teams in pause. But yes, these are two completely different situations. Correct.
Yep, exactly. All right. So we are now moving on to the middle of the first round. The Arizona Cardinals are up with the 16th pick. Who do they select?
Yeah, I debated this one as well, where I was thinking about a secondary player. I was thinking about an interior defensive lineman because they really wanted to get Milton Williams in free agency and struck out there and eventually pivoted to Josh Sweat. But I'm going to go to the interior of the offensive line here, another position of need for them. And the best guard on the board is Alabama guard Tyler Booker. This is the best guard prospect in the draft. For most teams, he's a plug and play guard right away for this Arizona Cardinals team. If they take him, he allowed only 1 sack in over 950 pass blocking snaps in college in Alabama. He is somebody who's also a natural leader. He is somebody who's always looking for work. If he's just there and he has nothing to do, he's going to find somebody to bring down. And really, Booker in the run game with James Conner running behind him would be filthy there in Arizona. Arizona's run game really does lean on physicality over finesse, and that is basically what Tyler Booker is. So I have him going here for the Arizona Cardinals. Keep in mind the first ever draft for Monty Ossenford. He took Paris Johnson at the left side. I think he wants to fortify that interior of the offensive line, so I'm going to go with Tyler Booker for that.
All right. Next up, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. Their defense obviously was a hot mess last year. Do you imagine that's going to be the side of the ball they select a player with the 17th pick?
Yeah, you nailed it. Bengals need defense. I'm going to go Oregon defensive tackle Derrick Harmon here. I mean, Harmon, had a really great year, his only year at Oregon. And his powerful hands, long reach, explosive block shedding really disrupts things in the interior of the defensive line. Really, the only consistent guy on the line has been Trey Hendrickson. Of course, we know he is currently in a contract dispute, but he would instantly upgrade the Bengals defensive line right away. If Trey Hendrickson is back, that would only help him as well. He led the FBS of all interior defensive linemen in quarterback pressures last year. I think he could go higher than this, but if he's there for the Bengals, this pick makes a lot of sense.
All right. We are on to the NFC West's Seattle Seahawks, 18th pick. Who are they going with?
The Seahawks did not really address their offensive line, especially the interior, this offseason. So I'm going to go with North Dakota State offensive lineman Gray Zabel. And listen, there were their fans. They wanted them to sign Will Fries. They did not. They wanted them to sign Tevin Jenkins. They did not. There are some other guys who are still out there, like a Brandon Scherf. Maybe they address it after the free agency. But Zabel has been one of the fast riders of this draft. He has really just crushed every single checkpoint, from Senior Bowl to combine to meetings to workouts to everything. He has crushed every single aspect, and this is somebody who has the potential to play all 5 positions on the offensive line. Very versatile. He started games at left guard, left tackle, right tackle at North Dakota State. At the Senior Bowl, which I mentioned a second ago, he did some center work. He was outstanding. So he really could do it all on the offensive line. The Seahawks, that interior has been a problem for a very long time. They have a new quarterback in Sam Darnold. We watched Week 18 and that playoff game where the interior of the Vikings offensive line did not help him at all. The Seahawks have to address it at some point, and they take Gray Zabel here at number 18.
That's a team that's always been adamant. They don't like taking offensive linemen, particularly there on the in part of it. We'll see.
It would be a change of philosophy for John Schneider for sure, but I don't know why they didn't address it in free agency. They made an offer to Will Fries. It was not as good as the Vikings offer, so they have not addressed it at all, and it was a huge issue last year. And I don't know how you could go into this year with Sam Darnold with what they have right now. Maybe they get a veteran later, but I think it would be wise to get one of these guys here in the first round.
All right, last pick of the teens. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are on the clock with the 19th pick, and they go with
Georgia defensive end Mykel Williams. And I feel like Williams, the range of outcomes from him is pretty wide. He could be somewhere in the top 10. He could be in the middle of the first round. He could be in the bottom of the first round because he did not have the breakout season that he wanted. And it was in part because he dealt with a nagging ankle injury, which he suffered at the start of the year. But he is blazing off the edge with elite speed to power, natural bend. He brings huge upside. And this is somebody who is still only 20 years old. So this is the exact player that Todd Bowles loves to have on his defense. Keep in mind, they addressed pass rush in free agency with Hassan Reddick, but that was only a 1-year deal, $14 million. They need someone there for the future. So I like this pick for them. Again, the range of outcomes from Mykel Williams really anywhere in the first round for me. He did accept a draft invite. Then he went back and said he's not coming. Don't think it means anything, but I think it's worth noting. If it's not him, one more name to watch. We'll get to him in a second in my mock, but Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama, would also make sense here. Levante David is year to year. He is an exceptional player, so I think that would also make sense for Todd Bowles' defense.
All right, and we are now moving on to the 20th pick of the draft. The Denver Broncos are up. They have been incredibly tied to running backs. Is that where you're going with this one?
That is where I'm going, and I was torn, and I wish I could give 2 picks here. I'll mention both names because I just did it for the Bucs anyways, but 2 names for the Broncos: Omarion Hampton, the UNC running back, and then the Ohio State running back Trayvon Henderson. First, let me just say this. Sean Payton does not care about your mock drafts. If he finds a player that he loves, value be damned. He'll take them wherever it is if he likes that player. We saw him do it multiple times in New Orleans. We saw him do it last year in the draft at quarterback with Bo Nix when he took him at number 12. I don't know if there was any other team that was that high on Bo Nix, but that was a fit for Sean. That was his number 1 quarterback for what he does, and he took him at number 12, and he was willing to trade up as well to get him because he wanted him. So Trayvon Henderson, I don't know how many people have him going in the first round. I've had so many people tell him they've done a lot of work on him. They talked to him at the combine. They went to him at Ohio State. They brought him into the building. They spoke to him privately. So he would make sense here. But Omarion Hampton, for most teams, is the number 2 running back in this draft. And I think his awesomeness and how great he was overshadowed over the last couple of years by Drake May a couple years ago. This past year of Ashton Jeanty, the Ohio State running backs, Cam Scadaboo. No one talks about how great he was. He was the offense at UNC. Everyone knew that Drake May was no longer there. There was no other talent. And regardless of that, he still had an exceptional year leading the ACC in rushing yards and still also being an exceptional player out of the backfield as well. So I could see it being any of those 2 running backs. Would not surprise me if it's Henderson. Would not surprise me if it's Hampton. But everyone believes in the NFL that the Broncos are taking a running back here because they want to complement somebody there with Bo Nix, somebody who could be a joker and a 3-down back and be there for Sean Payton and be a 1,000-yard rusher right away in his rookie year. So I do believe they're taking running back. I would be surprised if it's not. I just don't know which one it is. In this mock, I'm giving them Hampton.
I was waiting to click the button that entire time. I'm like, he'll eventually say it. He'll eventually
I didn't say it.
Hampton.
I thought I said it. I said Hampton.
You went back and forth there. You gave a good case for both. So my question becomes then, if you are one of the teams that maybe are looking at a running back and you're really like one of these 2 guys and you know that the Denver Broncos might want one or the other, could you imagine that there is a team that would be willing to move up somewhere in that, 15 to 19 range so they could swoop in and take one of those other running backs before, Denver inevitably takes one of them?
Well, there have been reports out there, and it's true. Just talking to some teams in that 15 to 19 range, or really a little bit higher than that, the one team that has been making the most aggressive phone calls up to this point has been the Denver Broncos. I don't know if that's actually for a running back. Maybe they have somebody else in mind. Maybe if it's Jeanty drops a little bit, maybe that could be it. Maybe they just want to secure their running back and get it over with. I'm not sure, but the one team that has been aggressive here and trying to figure out the trade market is Denver. And maybe it's because of your reason, Ben, because they are afraid one of these teams will jump them for a running back, which is a crazy thing to say in 2025, a team trading up in the first round for a running back. But when Sean identifies somebody and he wants that person, he's getting him. The great example I can give you from New Orleans was that Marcus Davenport trade, where he gave up a future first-round pick to move up from the late 20s to, I believe, 14 or 16 to take him. It didn't work out, but the point was he wanted him. That was, he believed, the missing piece to a potential Super Bowl winning team. When he believes there's a player that could help his team, he is getting him. And there's one person who did not care about future draft picks. It was in New Orleans. It was Sean Payton and their GM, Mickey Loomis. That will continue here in Denver. If they have to make a move, they will make a move.
Well, and I think a lot of people are going to think back to Jahmyr Gibbs from a couple of years ago as well, who, even though he was highly touted, he was not necessarily somebody that they pegged going in the top 15 picks. And sure enough, Detroit Lions select him. He becomes an impact player for them almost immediately out of the gate. So I guess that's kind of also the thinking there, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, everyone was shocked about the Jahmyr Gibbs pick. They were like, what are you doing? It makes no sense. The impact that he had for that offense, for Jared Goff, who I would say is a bit of a similar quarterback to Bo Nix a little bit with their play style, that is something that will make a difference. And I think Sean is looking at Bo. He was so impressed with what he did last year, how he took in his offense and all the details and all the little things that Sean is so particular about, how great Bo Nix was. He has mentioned a million times this offseason, I'm looking for a joker for my offense. And they got somebody in Evan Ingram, but I don't think that was the joker he was talking about. I think he's looking for somebody in this draft. Trayvon Henderson could really do it all. He could run, he could block as a pass protector, he could catch the ball. That's why people think he is the name that the Broncos are looking at, but Hampton will fit the bill as well. Maybe not as good of a pass protector, but both these guys would make sense for me for Sean Payton at number 20, and I do believe they're taking a running back there.
All right, let's go ahead and recap the last 10 picks like we did earlier. At number 11, Graham to the 49ers. At 12, Matthew Golden to the Cowboys. 13, Jahdae Barron to the Dolphins. Oh, stumbling there. 14, Colston Loveland to the Colts. 15, Mike Green to the Falcons. 16, Tyler Booker to the Cardinals. 17, Derrick Harmon to the Bengals. 18, Gray Zabel to the Seahawks. 19, Mykel Williams to the Buccaneers. And right there at 20, even though you went back and forth 50 times, Omarion Hampton to the Broncos. We now move to the 21st pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. The Pittsburgh Steelers are on the clock. They've got a lot of options. What do they choose?
All right. I'm giving them Shador Sanders here, even though I really don't know if they're actually going to take him here. And in this mock, if I don't give them Shador Sanders here, he's not going in the first round. So I also want to make sure I get all the players who actually go in the first round to be in my mock. So I'm just putting Shador Sanders here. Now, it could happen. Omar Khan, their GM, did his press conference on Tuesday. He mentioned how he likes this quarterback class. Mike Tomlin openly talked about Shador Sanders and what he liked about him and all these different things, which from Pittsburgh reporters that I read, he usually never goes in depth about a college player who's not on the team yet. And he did it for Shador Sanders for whatever reason. Now, we know what their situation is. Right now, the only quarterbacks there are Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson. They need a quarterback here. Aaron Rodgers is out there, but he basically said retirement is still an option and did not commit to anything. So they need to figure this out. This roster is ready-made for a veteran guy. It's not really made for a young guy. But Shador Sanders is somebody who I think would vibe with a Mike Tomlin and the head coach there. I think he would vibe with a veteran roster as well because he's been around football his entire career. I think he is somebody who, I mean, we see how the media is talking about him and trying to bring him down. Listen, are there holes in his game? Yes. Was he in the best situation ever in the world at Colorado and Jackson State? No. The offensive lines were not great. He was not always in the best position. I think the Steelers look at the situation, and the ideal scenario for them is to, if they draft him, is to bring him in, but for him not to play at all in 2025 and eventually have him become the future franchise quarterback and hope that Aaron Rodgers comes this year or Kirk Cousins comes this year and he becomes your quarterback for now. And then eventually you have your future Ben Roethlisberger in a guy like Shador Sanders. So that's the guy I'm giving him here at 21. I mentioned earlier, I still think he could go as high as number 3. But after that, I don't think he's going number 9 to the Saints. Never got the vibe that they're interested. 21 is really the next spot over here for Shador Sanders. I'm going to give him here to the Steelers. Would not surprise me if they pass and go on a defensive player because that defense is aging. But for this mock and this pick over here, I'm going to give them Shador Sanders. And if he does not go here at 21, I think the trade up possibilities really start ramping up over here on the bottom of the first round.
Running back Jaylen Warren, of course, signed his tender to remain with the Steelers this upcoming season. Do you think that he has warmed up enough and practiced enough to catch the 200 checkdowns that he would be getting targeted with this upcoming season if Sanders was the quarterback?
I think they're going to address running back here in the draft as well. They brought in 9 different running backs on those 30 visits. You only have 30 visits into your building. 9 of them were running backs. So I don't think it's going to be here in the first round. They did bring in Omarion Hampton and Henderson, who, of course, we just talked about at pick number 20 with Denver. Keep in mind, by the way, Pittsburgh does not have a second round pick. So this is a team also that I think could also trade down to accumulate more picks if they want to. I'm not fully sold they're taking a quarterback here. I'm not 100% sold on it. I think they would like to recoup a pick at some point in this draft. If they want to get a running back, if they want to get a different quarterback, they don't have that second round pick. So keep that in mind over here of 21 when they're picking. There is no coming back for Jackson Dart or Shador Sanders. If you want to take them, you're taking them now, or you're trying to slide down over here to get more picks and then take a quarterback with those extra picks. So that is also one to watch over here with the Steelers.
I love the 200 check down part. Was like, yeah, that's right. That sounds normal. That just completely, you're like, yeah, they should be ready for that. That wasn't even like the talking point that Sanders was going to throw the ball like 4 yards.
I do know he threw the ball behind the line of scrimmage a lot. I do know a lot of people have criticized that. I also would mention that the offensive line at Colorado was not in the best place in the world, and that played a part of it. So this Steelers offensive line has a lot of young guys that they've drafted over here over the last couple of years. Fatanu, Broderick Jones, they still have the veteran guys. Of course, they drafted a center in Zach Frazier, who is so underrated and is already becoming one of the best centers in football. So if they do take a quarterback here, from an offensive line standpoint, there are 5 guys there who they believe will give their quarterback time. That's a big part of this as well.
There you go. All right. 22nd pick. We have the Los Angeles Chargers. Who are they going with?
So the Chargers lost Puna Ford in free agency, a defensive tackle who they valued a lot. Their GM, Joe Ortiz, mentioned this week that they tried to bring him back. They offered him a contract, but he decided to go to the other LA team with the Rams. So they're going to address the interior of the defensive line of pick number 22 with a player who their head coach, Jim Harbaugh, is very familiar with. Kenneth Grant, the Michigan defensive tackle who played for Harbaugh at Michigan, now reunites with him in Los Angeles. This is somebody who really offers the size of a nose tackle with the movement skills that he should not have for the size that he has. So this is somebody who they need in that interior of the defensive line. It makes a lot of sense. They, of course, brought back Khalil Mack on the edge. They don't have Joey Bosa anymore, but there is a glaring hole there on the interior of the defensive line, and getting somebody who Harbaugh's familiar with. He did it a couple of times last year. Would not surprise me if he does it over here again at pick number 22.
All right. We're moving on to the Green Bay Packers. They've got a few needs, few holes. Depending on who you ask there, they need a wide receiver. 23rd overall. Is that where they're going?
They've not taken a wide receiver since the early 2000s in Jalon Walker. The last couple of years, Ben, in my mock drafts, I've given them a wide receiver. They have disappointed me. So this year, I'm not going to give them a receiver. We're not surprised if they decide to do it because I don't. But I'm going to go with a cornerback. With his slide is finally over. Michigan cornerback Will Johnson. And we know the situation in Green Bay. Jair Alexander is available for trade. He is somebody who they've openly talked to teams about. It's a situation where they don't want to release him outright because they really do think they could get some value for him. But to this point, it has not happened. But they have to get younger at that position. They have to get healthier at that position. Will Johnson, one of the criticisms is he was not healthy this past year, had a toe injury. He had a hamstring injury also throughout this pre-draft process. He did not run the 40-yard dash at his pro day, which for some teams has been a problem. They really try to figure out what is his true speed, which they do not know. His medicals is also a factor for a bunch of teams, but the tape, especially in 2023, his 2024 tape definitely took a dip from what it was in 2023. But his 2023 tape will tell you that this is one of the best cornerbacks in the draft, should be the next cornerback after Travis Hunter. If teams are okay with that, if they're okay with putting 2024 to the side, similar to how teams put tape to the side of Derrick Stingley when he was tremendous in his freshman year and had some slumps, obviously, the next couple of years. If that's the case, he should go higher, possibly as high as number 11 in San Francisco. But in this mock, I have him going number 23, and the Packers would gladly take him there.
Sticking in the division with one of their rivals, there's going to be a new man on the Minnesota Vikings. Who are they going with at 24?
All right, let's preface this. The Vikings have only 4 picks in this draft. It is the fewest of any team in this year's draft. So I think they're open to sliding down. If Shedeur is still on the table here, I think teams could be looking to call the Vikings to move up to this spot. But this is a team that I'm going to go with South Carolina safety, our first safety off the board, Nick Emenwari. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. But the safety position in Minnesota, you have Harrison Smith, the ageless wonder at age 36, back for another year. They just lost Cam Bynum in free agency to the Indianapolis Colts. This is a player who ran a 4.38 40-yard dash. He leaped 43 inches at the vertical, and he is somebody who did an 11 feet and 6 inches on the broad jump. Those are some of the best numbers, records for safeties that we have not seen since the early 2000s, when they were not even having all these numbers tracked. So this is a player who would fit Brian Flores' defense with his versatility. He could play multiple spots for them. He would fit that defense really well. If they stick and pick, that is the guy I am going with for Brian Flores' defense. But again, this is also a situation right now where I can see them trading down.
So notably, he's not that far off in a lot of the consensus rankings, but Malachi Starks is somebody that a lot of people assume is going to be the first safety off the board. Why do you feel that they would rather go with Emenwari than they would with Starks? Is it just truly the versatility?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. With the Brian Flores defense, some of the comps you get is as a Cam Chancellor type or a Kyle Hamilton type, one of these bigger safeties out there who could just do a little bit of everything. And that just fits Brian Flores' defense, who has some of these complex defensive structures out there where it's, we saw quarterbacks this past year, week 2 against the 49ers and Brock Purdy, week 3 versus CJ Stroud and the Texans, where in the post-game comments, they were like, that defense, Brian Flores, what they do with their corners, with the safeties, I've never seen it before. So this is a player that just makes sense for them, makes more sense than Malachi Starks, who I think is a great player, but safety and the premium position, and if you like it, not everyone likes taking them in the first round. I think this one just makes sense for Brian Flores, and this is the player I gave them.
With the 25th pick, the Houston Texans are on the clock. They decimated their own offensive line this offseason, which was already an area of concern. I imagine that is going to be a position they are targeting with this pick, right?
Yeah, some of the guys here dropped for them, and I'm going to give them Ohio State offensive tackle Josh Simmons. Missed 8 or 9 games this past year with a significant knee injury. He did have the medical recheck in Indianapolis. Every team has a different opinion on it, but from his camp, his people say he should be ready to go for training camp. This is somebody who could be their future franchise left tackle. You could start off with Cam Robinson, who decided to a 1-year deal this offseason. You have Trent Brown there as well, who could play on the right side or the left side if you ever need him. But this is somebody who let him get healthy and then eventually come in and become your future franchise left tackle. They have to address the offensive line. Laramie Tunsil is gone. Shaq Mason is gone. Kenyon Green is gone. Those 3 players did not have their best years anyways. That offensive line was not in a great spot last year, whether it was on the field or also in the offensive line room. They wanted to reset it. They did reset it. And now it's time to get younger. They have those aging veteran guys who could be the stopgap for now, but they need someone for the future, and I gave them Josh Simmons.
All right. We are up to the other Los Angeles team. The Rams are on the clock. They have been connected to some of the quarterbacks for a potential heir to Matthew Stafford. Who do they go with the 26th pick?
Yeah, this one was a difficult one for me because there are some people in the NFL who do believe the Rams are a quarterback team at some point in this draft. I don't think it's going to be in the first round. I'll mention this again because I mentioned it a couple weeks ago. The Matthew Stafford adjusted contract, which was done during the combine, I think it got done with the Rams. It still has not been filed with the NFL. I have not seen those numbers yet. So I don't know if this is a 1-year deal with guaranteed money. Is there guarantees going into year 2? For whatever reason, it has not been filed to the NFL yet. So I do believe from what I've heard at the time that this is a 1-year raise and only 1-year guarantees, but I don't have that down as a fact. So that's a bit of a side note here. But for this pick, I'm going to go defense, and I'm going to go with a player who is sliding, and a slide is finally over. Alabama linebacker Jahdae Campbell. This is somebody who has really side to side. He is an exceptional player who started at Alabama as an edge rusher. Did not end up panning out there because they just had so many pass rushers from Will Anderson and Dallas Turner. I'm sure I'm missing some players. They moved him over to off-ball linebacker, and he led the Crimson Tide this past year with 112 tackles. He had over 11 tackles for loss. He had 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. Really is all over the field. I know the Rams have not been a team that values linebackers, at least with second contracts. Under this regime, if you remember last year, they traded away Ernest Jones, which was a surprise, but they kind of missed him last year. So this is a way of helping that out, and I give them Jahdae Campbell of here, who his slide is finally over here to the Rams.
Baltimore Ravens are up with the 27th pick in the draft. Malachi Starks is a very chalk pick for them. He's still available here on the clock for you. They take him.
I debated Malachi Starks. In the end, for what it's worth, he's not going to go in the first round in this draft. I'm going to go with Texas A&M defensive lineman Shemar Stewart. And this is the type of player who you kind of create him in video games. Like his 40-yard dash was a 4.59. He hit 40 inches on the vertical jump at the combine, but the production was just not there at Texas A&M. The most sacks he had in a year was 1.5. So you're really betting on the traits and your development team and putting him there and basically saying our coaches is going to get the most out of him because his numbers were not there. If you look at the analytics people, his pass rush metrics, they were better, and that is stuff that I do believe the Ravens take very seriously. So you're betting on this guy over here, and you look at the Ravens right now, all their key pass rushers, Odafe Owe, Kyle Van Noy, a couple other guys there on the defensive line, all of them are entering the final year of their contract. So they need guys over here for the future. So I'm going to give them Shemar Stewart here. But I did debate Starks as well over here. If one of the offensive linemen, like a Brooks, fall over here some way, somehow, I think that's in play as well. But in this mock, Shemar Stewart is the pick.
I'll say, as a Baltimore Ravens fan, as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube over my shoulder, the helmet, not totally biased at all. I would love that pick. I really am a big upside kind of guy, and he's a project, but you've got a lot of veterans there on the defense that can kind of coach him up, and you've got enough strength in the secondary outside of the safety position that hopefully, the other guys there, Kyle Hamilton and such, can make up for not taking a safety with this pick. So let's go ahead and keep moving on, though. We have the Detroit Lions up with the 28th pick. Where do they go?
I'm going to go offensive line here, which is a strength for this team for sure. But Oregon offensive tackle Josh Connerly Jr., some people don't have him in the first round. I think we're going to have a bunch of offensive linemen going here in the first round. I mentioned this on a previous episode, I believe last week. NFL teams are in dire need of offensive linemen. I mean, we saw what some of these guys were getting paid this offseason. Dan Moore in Tennessee, Jalen Moore in Kansas City, Aaron Banks in Green Bay. Stupid money. Like for the talent that they have, it's insane money. So that's why we're going to see some of these guys who are middle of the second round, late first round guys just getting pushed up the board. Josh Connerly is a second round talent, but I look at the Detroit Lions. I look at how they develop players. I look at Taylor Decker, their left tackle, who is 31. Graham Glasgow, their left guard, is 32. This is a player who you could bring in. He loves football. He would vibe with Dan Campbell. And in the Big Ten championship game against Penn State, that's the one game that NFL scouts really, really loved. He went up against Abdul Carter, who had 0 sacks in that game against Josh Connerly. So I think this is a player who you bring in, you develop him, and eventually you could start him off at guard with Graham Glasgow, and eventually he moves on because his contract is coming up soon. Then eventually with Taylor Decker, whenever the time comes, he could be your future left tackle. If you want to move Penei Sewell over to that side, you could do that as well and move him to the right side. There are options here with a player like him, but this is a strength. Why not keep it a strength in the future as well?
Back to the DMV, the upstart Washington Commanders are on the clock with the 29th pick. Do they go with somebody to help out Jaden Daniels on the offensive side of things?
I'm going to give them a receiver. And the reason I'm going with this player is because I've had too many people telling me he's going to go in the first round. So make sure he goes here. I'm going to give them Ohio State wide receiver, Emeka Egbuka. Now, this is somebody who I feel like was overshadowed by Marvin Harrison a year ago. He was overshadowed this past year by Jeremiah Smith. This is just somebody who is a good, safe, reliable player who just makes things happen. It kind of reminds me of a different receiver in Washington, in Terry McLaurin, who just happens to be also went to Ohio State. So created a bit of Ohio State wide receiver room down there in Washington for Jaden Daniels. I know they traded for Deebo Samuel. That is a one-year thing. I think they're going to use him in many different ways, so not just as a wide receiver. Go strengthen that room. I know some people are giving out pass rushers here. I've seen some secondary as well for Washington. It makes some sense. I just had to get Egbuka here into the first round. I could see it happening here for Washington. And think about this, all the great receivers in Ohio State history, Egbuka had the most receptions of any of them with 205. He just makes things happen. He'll make plays for you, and I have him going here in the first round to Washington.
All right, we are now into the final picks of the draft, the final three. Buffalo Bills are on the clock with the 30th pick. Where do they go?
I'm going to go with Ole Miss cornerback Trey Amos, one of my risers here in the last couple of weeks. It could also be Maxwell Hairston, the other cornerback as well here, but they need somebody across from Christian Benford, who they just extended on a very big contract. They moved on from a different cornerback who they drafted in the round one a couple of years ago in Kair Elam. They traded him over to Dallas this offseason. They need somebody. Amos has been a riser in his only year this past season at Ole Miss. He finished second in pass breakups with 15. He's somebody who has a nose for the football. Again, I could see them going with Maxwell Hairston as well, but I think they need to address that quarterback position in that AFC Championship game versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Sean McDermott, their head coach, talked about how much they missed Christian Benford in that game when he got injured. They need to have somebody reliable there in case of injury as well. So I think they go cornerback in this draft, and I go with Trey Amos here for them.
You've mentioned recently how many offensive linemen were going to be going in the first round of this draft, and it seems like there's going to be another one coming up here with the Kansas City Chiefs in the 31st pick, as they have moved a few guys this offseason, shuffled around on the offensive line there. Is that where they go in your mock draft?
I do have them going offensive line. I will say this. If Omarion Hampton some way somehow is here on the board at 31, I think that is a player they would strongly consider here and bring him over to Kansas City and pair him up with Patrick Mahomes in that offense. But of course, in my mock, I have him going to a different AFC West team with the Broncos. So I'm going to go offensive line with Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State. He was a guard at Ohio State. He kind of became their savior this past year for the national championship winning team when Josh Simmons got hurt for those last 8 to 9 games. He kicked out the left tackle. He looked better at left tackle than he did at left guard, if we're being honest here. And the Chiefs have started 6 different players at left tackle over the last 4 years. It's about to become number 7 of Jalon Moore, who they signed in for agency. Just a 2-year contract. There's guarantees in both years, but you could bring in Donovan Jackson. He could play left guard for you. I know the plan right now is to use Kingsley Suamamita. Oh, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but the plan right now is for him to be the left guard going into this year. But if that does not work out, Donovan Jackson could be a name who could start over there as well. If they need options, they need to protect that left side of Patrick Mahomes, and they of course traded away Joe Thuney. Getting more bodies there, I think, is very important. If a guy they like is there on the board, I think they go with him, and I give them Donovan Jackson here at number 31.
And with the final pick of the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft, the Philadelphia Eagles are on the clock. They always find a way to get such a steal of a pick, such a steal of a player. What do they do here at 32?
I mean, trenches. That's all you hear about the Philadelphia Eagles. Ole Miss defensive tackle Walter Nolen is the pick here. Now, I've seen there's been buzz out there. He could go as high as 11 to the 49ers. He could go number 12 to the Dallas Cowboys. Maybe he does. He's not for everybody. There's a few things with him, whether there's just stuff out there that teams are a little bit concerned about. Maybe it doesn't fit their scheme. Whatever it is, I think the Eagles have proven over and over again, you could bring in those type of guys into their building and they will be committed. They lost Milton Williams. You want to keep that defensive line fresh. You have Jalen Carter. You have Jordan Davis. You want another player to be there. I give them Walter Nolen here. Keep in mind, the Eagles have 20 picks in the next 2 drafts when you include compensatory picks, which they will be getting 4 of them next year. I could see them moving around the board as well over here, whether that's going up and trying to get a player, whether that's going down to try to get more picks and eventually trading those picks for veteran players. Howie Roseman, his phone is always ringing. He's always trying to make stuff happen. So if they don't like what's there at 32, I could see them moving around over here as well. But in this mock, Walter Nolen and addressing the interior of the defensive line once again is my pick.
All right, so we have made it through the first round. We obviously know when it comes to the NFL draft, the first pick of the second round is one that a lot of teams target, as well as that 32nd pick in the first round. Do you imagine that the Eagles will get quite a few phone calls about that for maybe a team trying to steal Jackson Dart or one of these other guys that, didn't necessarily make it in those top 31 picks?
I think those calls for the trade up, especially for the quarterbacks, it's going to start with the Vikings at 24 is where I think. I don't think teams are going to try to jump the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it's too big of a jump. If you're trying to jump the Steelers, just take them where you are right now at the top of the draft. If you're willing to wait, I think Minnesota at 24, just 4 draft picks, is the place to look at over here. I think Minnesota is open to trading down. I think they want to get some more picks over here. So that's where it all starts over here. And of course, the Eagles at 32. The last time they won a Super Bowl, Ben, they were picking number 32. They traded out with your team, the Baltimore Ravens, and they gave them Lamar Jackson. So if you're trying to get a quarterback, if you want to get somebody at the end of the first round, I think the Eagles will be open to it, but I think it starts at 24 with the Minnesota Vikings.
All right, let's run through these picks very quickly for those of you watching on YouTube, which I suggest this will be a lot easier for you to follow along on screen. But with the first pick, the Tennessee Titans went Cam Ward. The second pick, Browns went Travis Hunter. Third pick, Giants go Abdul Carter. Fourth pick, Patriots go Will Campbell. Fifth pick, Jaguars go Tet McMillan. Sixth pick, Raiders go Armand Membou. Seventh pick, Jets go Tyler Warren. Eighth pick, Panthers go Jalen Walker. Ninth pick, Saints go Kelvin Banks Jr. 10th pick, the Bears go Ashton Jeanty. 11th pick, the 49ers go Mason Graham. 12th pick, the Dallas Cowboys select Matthew Golden. 13th pick, the Dolphins select Jahdae Barron. 14th pick, the Colts select Colston Loveland. 15th pick, the Falcons select Mike Green. 16th pick, Tyler Booker goes to the Cardinals. With the 17th pick, the Bengals take Derrick Harmon. 18th pick, the Seahawks select Gray Zabel. 19th pick, the Buccaneers go Mykel Williams. 20th pick, the Broncos take Omarion Hampton. The 21st pick, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Shedeur Sanders. The 22nd pick, the Los Angeles Chargers select Kenneth Grant. The 23rd pick, the Green Bay Packers select Will Johnson. The 24th pick, the Vikings select Nick Imuwari. The 25th pick, the Texans select Josh Simmons. 26th pick, the Rams select Jahdae Campbell. The 27th pick, the Baltimore Ravens select Shamar Stewart. The 28th pick, the Lions select Josh Connerly Jr. The 29th pick, the Washington Commanders selected Emeka Egbuka. The 30th pick, the Bills select Trey Amos. The 31st pick, Donovan Jackson to the Chiefs. And finally, 32nd, Walter Nolen, Philadelphia Eagles. Which player was the hardest not to fit into that first round?
All right, a few guys here. I mentioned this guy going in the first round so many times here on the show, and I didn't put him in. Jaden Higgins, the wide receiver at Iowa State. I had a few people tell me he's going in the first round. I mean, he is just exactly what teams, especially with young quarterbacks, trying to get them that big body receiver who just get the ball. That's Jaden Higgins. I just couldn't find the place for him. I really wanted to put him in there. I think if it's not the first round, you hear his name early in round 2. I think the Tennessee Titans picking at 35 would make a lot of sense with Cam Ward. Maxwell Hairston, the cornerback, Malachi Starks, the safety, and then Donovan Iziraku, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, out of Boston College. Those were the other 3 that I was debating putting in, just couldn't find a spot for them. But those are probably the 4 guys that I had that I really struggled and was debating about where to put them, because you make these calls, you text with scouts and executives and those type of people, and they're like, yeah, I think that guy goes in the first round. But I have some of these guys that I don't really know where to put them. You ask them which team, which scheme, where do you think it makes sense? You get all those answers, and eventually it's like, I think these guys make more sense than that guy if he's on the board. So those were probably the 4 names that I really struggled with. I know I gave Emeka Egbuka to the Washington Commanders. I consider giving them Jaden Higgins if it wasn't Egbuka. So I think that's a team that could be a receiver team here in this draft. I debated which one to give them. I gave them Egbuka because I like that fit more. But those were the 4 names that I struggled with. People bring up the quarterbacks. I talk to teams like, it's not a quarterback draft. Just get it over with. Just not, So these teams who are not in the quarterback market are like, these teams would be nuts to take them in the first round. They just would. So I don't see it happening. I think the top of the second round, we see way more action going on with quarterbacks there than we see in the first round. Maybe, just maybe, we get a quarterback trade at the bottom of the first round. I honestly don't see it happening, if I'm being honest with you. Maybe the Saints, because they're the one team that I think would have value of a 50-year option because their salary cap is such a mess. So having the extra year would actually help them. But aside from that, I mean, I just don't see it based off talking to these teams. Frankly, if Shedeur does not go 3, if he does not go 21 to the Steelers, I think outside of the first round is a real possibility. So that's where I stand right now. When it comes to all this, I had a hard time with the quarterbacks, but we'll see what ends up happening. We'll have our answers here on Thursday night. My goal with this mock is to get as many names in the first round to actually go in the first round. Last year was 26 of 32. A couple years ago it was 28 of 32. I want to be over 25 names in the first round and hopefully try to get at least 7 to 10 guys to the correct team. So last year was 11 guys, 7 for 7 to start. I'll be honest with you, I don't think we have that this year. This was a really tough one to do, but I like the way it came out, and we'll get the answers here on Thursday night.
2 other names that I don't believe you mentioned that were, I mean, at one point they were considered top 10 picks if this past season hadn't been played, and that's James Pierce Jr. as well as Luther Burden. Neither of those guys made it into your first round. Do you imagine that there are going to be teams that maybe lean on that option of, hey, real high potential ceiling here, and you could see them sneak into the back end of the first round?
James Pierce and Luther Burden, to me, there's teams that just have the red flags about them as football players, nothing to do with significant off the field stuff. But you really have to make sure if those 2 guys, they go to the right environment. And those teams in the bottom of the draft who have playoff success and have good quarterbacks and good coaches, they could take that risk. I look at the Detroit Lions. Would they be okay with James Pierce as across from Aiden Hutchinson? It makes a lot of sense. Do they want him in that culture? That's the question. If they're okay with it, I could see them being a team. Luther Burden, I think he makes sense for a team like Sean Payton. I think he could control a player like him. I think 20 is too high for him, but I could see that team making sense, that coach making sense. So it really, really depends on where they end up and the situation they're in. I didn't put them in the first round because there are teams that were like, listen, with where we are at, young quarterback or young head coach or something like that, it's just not for us. So I kept them out of the first round again because I really want to get the first round guys in the first round. But if they go in the first round, it would not surprise me either. But for me, I just didn't get that vibe and I had to put them in.
All right, we kept it to about an hour. That's pretty good. Obviously, you're going to be very busy during the draft, but here at the 33rd team, we are also going to be busy with other stuff going on, particularly with our main broadcast, which is going to be the Check the Mic broadcast of the first round of the NFL draft. We'll also be doing the second and third rounds on Friday live as well. That'll be with Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson. Ari is going to be making an appearance before the show on Thursday, and then we will be doing some shorts that will drop throughout the night in between picks. Make sure that we give you guys a little bit of that instant analysis from Ari that we know you guys all love. And as far as that goes, we got one more show till the draft. Obviously, that's going to have a little bit of a shorter shelf life, but we still recommend that you take a listen to that show tomorrow, as we are going to be fitting in the final moments and the last key things that are going to get you set for the draft tomorrow night.
Tomorrow's episode is what I'm hearing before the NFL draft officially comes around. That's going to be the episode tomorrow. It will have a short life. Obviously, hopefully, a lot of that information will end up being true, because that buzz in the morning of the draft is usually where teams are making those aggressive phone calls to try to see what we're actually going to do and if we're going to move up or down. That's when you really get a good idea of what's actually going on. So that's episode coming out tomorrow. But today was the mock draft. We will see how it actually all comes down. We'll probably review it here at some point. Maybe it's on Friday, maybe it's on early next week, just to see how I did. But that was the mock draft. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you have any thoughts and comments, obviously leave it here. And we will be back here tomorrow morning when it's officially draft day. So we will see you all here tomorrow morning.